And this trick can be used not just for your overarching plot, but also right down to the sentence and your dialogue, just point by beat by beat by beat. I love it. Hey writers, X-Men does something particularly well most of the time. They have one character's choice create the consequences for another, and there is a beautiful decision cycle. And this is what makes it feel like it is a continuous story, even though most of the time it's actually episodic television. And this is what they did well in the early 90s, and it's what the reboot is doing really well. Here is this plot structure. The goal, conflict, disaster, reaction, dilemma, decision. I'm calling this the decision cycle. And I want to show you this with the most unlikely character of all, Val Cooper. Val Cooper's goals are the hinge that this entire season is based on, and every time she bends, it becomes someone else's problem. Val Cooper works for the government in some way, but she's a friend of Charles Xavier. And at the beginning of season 1, episode 1, we see her on the treadmill, not helping the X-Men. But by the end of the episode, she comes around and she gives Cyclops the proverbial pat on the back that he has been needing the whole episode because he's a great big stuffy baby. Sorry, not sorry. Then we see in the very next episode, she puts Magneto on trial, justifiably maybe, because he did some crappy stuff. But then obviously Magneto has his famous "Don't make me let you down" speech, and she seems to come around. But then we find out, golly gosh, wasn't she just sort of kind of responsible for the whole Genosha thing? Ick, gross. She's in bed with Bastion, hopefully metaphorically. I really didn't need that image. And then she frees Magneto, and she says, I think she's one of the first characters that says it, Magneto was right. And this is where we leave her in season 1. So at the beginning of season 2, we don't see her again until episode 2. X-Men are gone, lost in time. Val Cooper's solution is, let's create the X-Men. We'll even call them X-Factor, but they will work for the government and they will do what the government wants. And then we can control the mutants without actually looking like we're controlling the mutants, because we'll get the mutants to do it.
Now it's time for a breakdown.
Val creates a government-sanctioned X-Factor to control. X-Force rejects this control and breaks the mutant kids out of X-Factor custody. Val sees unsanctioned mutant teams as dangerous and decides not to allow them, clamps down harder, and treat unsanctioned X teams as illegal. X-Men activity is effectively outlawed unless sanctioned. Charles wants the X-Men to keep operating. Val's law blocks him, so the X-Men cannot legally function as before, so Charles works around this restriction. His decision is to escape the jurisdiction, and he builds X-Force on Genosha. Does anybody notice that when he builds this, he builds this skyscraper in the middle of Genosha's rubble and doesn't actually rebuild the city or anything else, just this giant skyscraper in the middle of all that wreckage? They don't even allow roads to bring in the construction equipment to build it. I mean, you do you, Chuck, but eek. Charles operates outside Val's jurisdiction, and Val wants to control the legal authority maintained. So Charles is obeying the letter, but defeating the purpose. So Val cannot simply shut the X-Men down. She looks for another way to control them, She could escalate directly, tolerate them, or find allies, and so she starts looking for more leverage. Val uses X-Factor as a sanctioned mutant force. Polaris wants to do the job and protect the people. The situation pushes her beyond Val's accepted limits. Polaris goes off script. Val fires her. Polaris can submit, walk away, or find another way to act, and Polaris joins the X-Men. Because Val allows a sanctioned mutant team to operate, the Friends of Humanity want less mutant power, not better managed mutant power. Even X-Factor is too much for them, so the anti-mutant politics escalates and they back Creed for president. They keep protesting from the sidelines and seize political power, turn mutant fear into electoral campaign. The Friends of Humanity elevate Creed. Creed wants political power. Exodus and his acolytes see this as another human threat to mutants, and they kidnap Creed. The X-Men intervene because they believe all life matters. Let the enemy die or save him. They rescue Creed and hand him over to X-Factor, leaving him on ice until they can pick him up. X-Men save Creed and return him to Val and X-Factor. Val still wants order and control. X-Men have helped, but outside the order of her authority, she needs them while opposing them. She cannot simply treat them as a straightforward criminals. So to work with them, attack them, and find another way. So she looks to X-Force. Meanwhile, X-Force wants to kill Apocalypse in Remy. X-Force wants to remove the threat permanently, and X-Men refuse to sacrifice Remy. The alliance fractures. X-Force cannot simply carry out the killing. Val sees the opportunity. X-Force are dangerous but unsanctioned, as the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and she recruits X-Force to join X-Factor. Val aligns X-Factor and X-Force to stop the X-Men, and that is us to the climax, and the X-Men resist. And this is how you build the tension. The consequences accumulate. Factions do not despair after one scene. X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, government, anti-mutant groups all develop reasons to act based on what came before. Eventually, Creed can possibly run for president because of the mess that X-Men, X-Force, and X-Factor have made not working together. Gives space for Creed to unite hate against the mutants as a whole. Escalation does not have to mean a bigger fight. It can mean more established characters now have reasons to act. So X-Men doesn't just escalate by making the threat bigger. It keeps handing the consequence to another character and their choice, and that having a reaction from our chief characters, our X-Men, and so on and so forth. So it just rolls like a cycle. And why this works so well is we start the episode with a choice. It could have been established in the episode prior. We start with a choice. There's a reaction to that choice. That reaction creates conflict. That conflict creates possibly other reactions until we have a consequence. But that consequence is sometimes felt by somebody who wasn't even in the episode. Like the case of episode 8 with Val. She wasn't in the episode at all, but she feels that she sees an opportunity in the consequence. X-Force is defeated and down to 3. They need some support to do what they want, to get what they want. So she recruits them onto her team so she can ultimately get what I want. My enemy's enemy is my friend. This was beautifully put by Mr. Know-It-All. If you know that channel, it's just amazing breakdowns. And he points out that everything that happens in this season, it's not about who it happens to, it's about who is watching. You think about when Magneto dies, we actually see it in Charles's eyes because it is all about Charles's reaction to that. Not about what happens to Magneto, but about how Charles reacts. And we see that reaction go deeper and deeper and deeper and carry on through the season. It does that pain does not just disappear and we forget it and we replace it with Polaris. No, Charles is weakening and not as strong and missing constantly through the season, and that is because of the loss of Magneto. Now, this is a plot point I think most writers miss in the decision cycle. You've got the goal, the conflict, the disaster, reaction, and the dilemma and the decision. The dilemma is before the choice. You've got to have the choice. Otherwise, the decision means nothing. If there's only one choice to make, then there's no story. It's not about what now. It's about what choice do you have. Does Charles break the rules, or does he find a way to work within the rules? If he breaks the rules, the result will be that the children are taken away. We see that in episode 6 when Charles goes to Genosha and Storm says, we need to go help. And Forge says, no, if we go help, then you as headmistress of the school you'll be seen as breaking the law, and therefore you will have the children taken away. Somehow this is completely forgotten in episode 8 when she goes and actually fights in America, in Louisiana, of all places. No idea why that is. I guess Colossus has the kids, so it's okay. Anyway, that's another point for another day. But that dilemma needs to happen before the decision. What does Val ultimately want? That is a very good question. And I think that it's really interesting that we don't really know. All her motivations seem well and truly established, but there is this question, like, why? Why did you choose to put yourself against Xavier, who was your friend? Was it because in your mind Magneto was right, therefore Xavier is wrong, therefore if Magneto's right, we can't all get along. So what we need to do is we need to control the mutants, but we don't want to do it by turning ourselves into robots. So what we'll do is we'll use them. Or, as some of you out there are saying, maybe she's Mystique. There is a precedent for this. Mystique has worked for Apocalypse before. If we think back to that episode where Rogue goes for the cure, it's actually called The Cure. It's a season 1, episode 9 episode. Mystique was pretending to be Dr. Adler, assumingly Dr. Adler's dead, and off on Muir Island in order to trick mutants, and Warren Worthington ends up getting the cure and becoming Death. So that is a really strong possibility, I think. I'm just spitballing here. Maybe you've got some ideas. Let me know what you think. But that whole idea of what is actually, like, what Val tells herself when she goes to sleep at night, I don't know. But every choice she makes influences someone else's choice. Val has a dilemma. She does not like Charles working around her rules, and she does not like Creed being kidnapped, and she wants control, and she wants to use the mutants as a tool of control. X-Force wants to kill Apocalypse. Apocalypse is in red meat. X-Men refuse this. So the decision, my enemy's enemy is my friend, she recruits X-Force to join X-Factor, and they'll align against the X-Men. And plus, we've got the Friends of Humanity, Creed, the Acolytes, and everybody else is in on this conflict. And this is where we are at the beginning of episode 9. More established characters having reactions and actions and dogs in the fight is what escalates and creates higher stakes and makes it so compelling to watch. Doing this, when you're doing this in your own work, look at your characters. Any character that's acting, what do they want? What choice has somebody else forced them to make? How do the decisions they make affect all of your other characters? And what person in the mix then has a dog in a fight now because of someone else's choices? And if you do that, this decision cycle will become a wonderful wheel that just keeps rolling, because every time someone makes a choice, somebody else reacts to it. And that's the decision cycle. And we come around again to the beginning of episode 9. Everybody's in place for a romping showdown because we know what everybody wants. So when you're writing, just think about who made the choice. That's your protagonist for this moment. And who is affected? That's your antagonist in this moment. And what does that person already want? What does the reader already know about these characters? And what do they do now about it? This can be down to the sentence level. This isn't just about chapters or overall book. This is about everything. And you can see that in X-Men 97. This happens, this happens, this. And sometimes the reaction, like Val's reaction to the end of episode 2, doesn't show up until the beginning of episode 6. You can have a whole lot of other stuff in between, but when you come back to that character, make sure that you've picked up that story and you've picked up that cycle. That is good writing. If you only take one thing away from this video, it's that one character's consequence becomes another character's motivation. One character's consequence becomes another character's motivation. Don't ask what happens next. Ask who acts next and why. The story cycle is based on the Dwight Swine scene sequel model, and it is beautifully explained in the Novel Factory in their goal to decision version built into its roadmap. And there's so many good tools there. And if you use the link in the comments below, you can get 30-day free trial, and it is fantastic. I've been using it for a few years and I love it. Use the code Joe Writes. Thank you, question everything, always 5038. I really appreciate it. Is the sound better this week? I really hope so. I really tried, and I really tried to come in with a kind of prepared script. I hope that worked for you. And Leo C. Men, am I pronouncing that right? I appreciate your comment about Wolverine in that video. It was just chef's kiss to both of you. And to my point earlier that X-Men 97 doesn't always get this right. I have to say, sorry, not sorry, but